Hi everyone. Welcome to Chandigarh MuleSoft Meetup. So, thank you so much for joining this session. Today's topic is streamlining MuleSoft deployments, achieving precision and efficiency with Maven and GitHub Action. So, let's begin with safe harbor statements. Both the host and speaker are organizing this meetup at individual capacity. We are not representing our organizations here. This presentation is strictly for learning purpose. We do not hold any responsibility that same solution will work for your business use case. This presentation is not meant for any promotional activities. Talking about the organizers of this meetup, so myself, Komalpreet Kaur, a senior solution consultant at Kilius Consulting. I am a MuleSoft mentor and meetup leader too. So I host meetups from two different locations, Mohali and Chandigarh. So looking forward to have a great session today. Here are the amazing speakers of our today's session. So Priyanshi Mehrotra and Sahil Kat. So I would like to pass mic to Priyanshi Malhotra to introduce herself. Yeah.
Thanks, Komal. Hi everyone. First of all, thank you so much for joining, and I welcome you all to today's Chandigarh MuleSoft Meetup. And hello, I'm Priyanshi Mehrotra, and I'm working as a senior solution consultant with Kalias Consulting. So I have a 2+ years of experience working with both homegrown and cloud-based end systems, and I've also contributed to multiple domain projects as well. And currently, I'm based in Mohali, Punjab. So yeah, that's it for my introduction. I'll pass it over to Sahil.
Sahil, I can't hear you.
Okay, am I audible now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. So, first of all, thank you everyone for joining today's session. And my name is Sahil, and I'm currently working as solution consultant here at Kilias Consulting. So, if I talk about myself, I'm a certified MuleSoft developer and MuleSoft mentor as well. I have worked on multiple MuleSoft and RPA projects across the various domains. Actually, this is my first MuleSoft meetup, so I'm pretty much excited for it. So, yeah, looking forward to have a great session today. Thank you.
Yeah. So Priyanshi, you can go ahead and share your screen. Let me stop sharing.
Sure. Give me a minute. And please do let me know if my screen is visible. I'll
Yeah.
go right into the PPT only.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's visible.
All right. Thanks, Komal. So, obviously, before starting with the agenda for today, I actually wanted to tell you all that we wanted to do this meetup for quite some time now because we actually wanted to show you that not just Maven and not just GitHub Actions, but how Maven and GitHub Actions together can perform its magic. Like how together through Maven and GitHub Actions, we can actually streamline our mules of deployments and how we can achieve precision and efficiency. So that will be the topic for today. And the agenda for today will be like we will be covering some concepts about Maven. That is, what is Maven? And then obviously that why Maven is important. Like why should we actually use it? So why do we need Maven? And then there's this concept of .m2 folder and pom.xml. I guess you already know about it. So we will be covering about that. And then if we are already covering about Maven, so we should know that how does Maven work. So we will go inside that. And then we have another topic, which is what is Mule Maven plugin. So this plugin is actually very important, and we'll see how this plugin actually helps us in building our projects through Maven. And then a very important topic of Maven, which is Maven build lifecycle, and how some of the life cycles have some particular phases and how those phases have some goals to fulfill. So we will actually look into that. So that will be all about Maven. And then we will straight go into what is CI/CD and then the introduction to GitHub Actions. And then at the very end, we will be covering a live demo where we will be showcasing you how to build a CI/CD pipeline using GitHub Actions, in which obviously Maven will be used. So this is how we will be covering the today's meetup, and then at the very end we can have our Q&A session. So yeah, let's just directly proceed into what is Maven. Let me just slideshow. All right, so going straight forward into our very first topic, that is what is Maven. So you can say that Maven was introduced with a group introduced Maven, which is an Apache group. So Maven is actually a tool that Apache introduced, a build tool, you can say. And why a build tool? Because Maven helps us to build and deploy our projects. And obviously, Maven is a very popular tool. So that is why Maven is a popular. And it is also an open source tool. Why? Because it is easily accessible over the internet and you can actually just use Maven and you can actually just go and download Maven also. So it is an popular open source build tool that is developed by Apache Group. And Maven is actually used to build, publish, deploy, and test our several projects. And it actually helps us to, do better project management. That's it. So as developers, you can say like we all are developers, right? So as developers, we undergo a specific series of process, a specific series of synchronized processes, such as we generate our code, we compile our code, we test our code, then we publish, and then we deploy our code, right? Now, for example, if you're just going through all of these steps now as developers, if we go and configure all of these things manually or just go and download all of these things manually, so it will obviously be a very time consuming burden, right? So what used to happen is that before Maven we had some kind of a script which was known as ant scripts. So you can say ant build scripts. So at that point of time before Maven, people actually used to download all the dependencies locally, like for example, manually. So they used to download the repositories, the dependencies, and everything else manually. So obviously, it is a very time-consuming burden. And if everything is done manually, so there can be chances when errors can come, right? So to ease that process, Maven was actually introduced. So obviously, that it's written to solve this issue. There was this Apache Maven which was introduced. So you can say that Maven was actually introduced with a goal to actually automate and streamline all of our projects.
Pragati, we have lost your audio.
I'm so sorry. I just had a quick network issue. Let me just. I have joined through my co-developer's laptop only. So I'll just share the screen using his laptop, and everything else is sorted. So there was this network issue in my laptop. So yeah, if I just go back to what I was saying, that is Maven. So yeah, so Maven was actually introduced with a goal, which I already said, that it is used to automate and streamline all of our project management. And through Maven, we will see that how the dependency management is easier, and we would have a standardized project structure. So that was all about Maven. Now, if we actually go and look into why do we need Maven? So these are some of the steps of why do we need Maven. So the very first is dependency management. Now, obviously, through Maven, um, all of our dependencies, because Maven actually download all of the dependencies for us. We don't have to go and download all of the dependencies from so and so repositories manually. Maven already does that for us. So it helps us in dependency management, and then Maven helps us in build automation. Why? Because Maven helps us to automate all of our things. And obviously, if there is dependency management, there is build automation, then there will obviously be consistency, right? So there, these are some of the pointers that why do we need Maven. And then you see the fourth point, that is integration with IDEs. Now if I tell you, so this is the studio. So for the integration with IDEs, you must have heard about that Maven is already embedded in your studios, right? So that is why there was this point that it is already embedded. So if I actually just go to Windows Preferences and I search Maven, So you see there are some of the options which are already there. So we can use our embedded Maven installation, and the default version right now, the Maven which is already installed, you can go to your command prompt and write MVN version. So you would see that the MVN version is 3.9.6. So this is what you can use, or you can also, override your settings.xml. You have all of those options over here. And then you must have seen that when you run your project in your Anypoint Studio, there is always this base command which is run for builds, that is mvn clean package minus dskip munit test. So in that, what happens that this is a Maven command that helps you to build your projects. So over here, Maven actually first cleans your project, it then packages your project, and after it is done, so if you have, for example, all of the munits in your project, so using this command it can skip to. And if you have already installed Maven and so, if I just maximize the screen, you can just click on this button and see, and you can test Maven configuration. So this is how you can actually test Maven configuration and see if everything else is working fine. So that is why there was this pointer of integration with IDs. Why? Because Maven is already embedded in your studios. It is not just about the Anypoint Studios, the MuleSoft that we do, but even if you accept MuleSoft, even if you're doing Java, you have your Eclipse and so. So Maven is already embedded in your Eclipse Studios as well, and in your Anypoint Studios too. And then the fifth point, which we have, deployment management. So obviously the deployment management is easier through Maven, because all of the dependencies, the repositories, all of the tags are already present in your pom.xml through your local repository, which we will talk about. So you don't have to actually go and do all of the things manually. So that is the main concept of why do we need Maven. So
Priyanshi, sorry to interrupt you. Can you please hide this sharing bar from the bottom? Yeah,
this one.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So then we have our next topic, which is .m2 folder. So you must have seen that the .m2 folder is a default folder that is already present in your, you can say, the local disk C. So I will just go and show you that too. But this is a default folder which is created by Apache Maven. And in this .m2 folder, we store all the dependencies, we store the plugins, we have the configurations and so settings. And this folder is typically located in the user's home directory as well. So if I just go and show you, so here it is. If I just click on C, users, and this is my home directory, and if I just go to .m2, so I would have two things which are the main things which Maven actually has in this local repository. So in this .m2 folder, sorry, we have this repository folder which is a local repository, you can refer to it. And then we have a settings.xml file, which is our xml file. So first, talking about the settings.xml file, so in this settings.xml file we have all of the credentials that we want for our project to be run, like all the secure configurations. For example, my Nexus credentials, my Anypoint platform, username, password. If I am making my connected app, so you can use the client ID and secret, and you can just secure your settings.xml. So for your specific projects, you can have your specific settings.xml. So that is what why settings.xml is actually used. And then you see there's the separate repository. So this is a local repository which is used. So there are three types of repositories which you can say. First is the local repository. Then there's this point which is written, which you can read, that when you build your Maven project. So you must have seen that when you build your Maven projects, at the very right hand side, at the bottom of your Anypoint Studio, there is this green scroller which keeps on running. So what is that thing doing? That green scroller is actually downloading all of the things for you. So Maven is actually playing its role over there. Maven is actually, downloading all of the dependencies and all of the things which actually will be used in building your project. So this is the local repository. So the dependencies are actually downloaded and it is kept in your local repositories, whatever dependencies are required for your project to be built. But if the dependencies are not found in your local repositories, then it actually goes to the remote repositories and search for that. Now, one example you can take of remote repository is your Anypoint exchange only. So if I just go back to the studio and cancel this. There is this the local repository I've already shown, and you see there's this option search in Exchange. So the one example of remote repository, you can take it off Exchange. So for example, you use connectors like your custom JSON loggers that you have. You use your secure properties. So all of the Mule secure configuration or your JSON logger dependencies, those are already not there in your pom.xml. Now, if we have to use them, so we would have to download the dependencies, right? So you can just go to your Exchange, type secure over here, and your Mule secure configuration will be right in front of you. So you can use that. You see Mule secure configuration, you can just add and finish. So this is how you can actually download some of the dependencies which are already present in your remote repository, which actually serves Exchange actually serves as your remote repository. And then, for example, if it is not found in your local repository, then it actually goes to the central repository also. It downloads and search from the central repository, and it keeps and downloads them for you in the .m2 folder. Now, for example, let me just, for example, I want to use my database connector, right? So I can drag and drop any connector of the database. And for example, I would just click on plus. So any connection we can use, for example, MySQL I'm using. So you see, we have these three options to to configure my JDBC driver. So the very first option is to use the add recommended libraries. So this will already give you the latest recommended libraries that are used that are actually being using nowadays. So you can just go ahead and wish to proceed, and you're just done. And the second option is of using local file. So that is, you have to do some kind of a manual work here. You have to provide the group ID yourself, you have to provide the artifact ID yourself, and you would have to provide the version yourself. So these are some of the things. But the third option that we mostly use is the third option, which is to pick the Maven dependency. So if I have to use my database connector, I would have to pick this dependency, right? And you see there's this search box that is there, search Maven Central. So if I just have to go back and, for example, let me just go and search Central repository. So here it is. I would just click on this. So I'm using my database connector, right? So now this JTBC drivers will come into place. I had used a MySQL connector Java. Now you see there's a list over here. There are so and so versions which are present, and the versions are actually coming from the central repository. These are the dates that it was published, and these are some of the usages, like for example, how many times it was used. And there's this another column you see of vulnerabilities. So each and every dependency also has some vulnerabilities, like you could have harm to your dependencies as well. And if you want to just go and read about your vulnerabilities, you can just go and click on this dependency, and you can read like what actual harm the dependency has. So you see, you have one vulnerability, three, five, and even the number increases. So in the older dependencies, like for example 5.1.27, you have eight vulnerabilities. Now you definitely don't want to use that, right? So I would just click on this 8.0.30, which I'm currently using, and you see this is the dependency which is actually right there, which I'm using. So you can actually just provide the group ID, artifact ID, and the version which is already present for you, and it actually downloads from the central repository for you. Even if you want to change the version also, you can just change the version in this search box, and it would be changed over here. And you can just do this and okay, and then finish. So this is how it is done. So this was all about the local repository, the remote repository, and the central repository, and how it downloads the things for you. So now comes a very important topic, which is Maven as dependency management. So you can think of Maven. Now we have already read that Maven manages the dependencies very efficiently, right? It downloads all the dependencies from various repositories, from the local, remote, central, and so for use. But how it does that? it does using those Maven coordinates. So it actually downloads all the dependencies using those Maven coordinates. So the Maven coordinates consist of the three things, which is group ID, artifact ID, and the version. And the combination of these three serves as the unique identifier for any artifact. Whether you want to use this Maven artifact to download something, you want to actually see that where it is present. So you can actually use these combination of three group ID, artifact ID, and version to exactly pinpoint and select the location like where it is present. So they function as a reference point specifying that where the artifact is stored and it is retrieved from. So everything in Maven uses coordinates. The you see this, we have a dependency over here. So we have this HTTP dependency. Now if I go back to my pom.xml of my project which I've already created, so the pom so this is using the HTTP dependency, which was right there in the PPT. So this is the dependency, right? Now this dependency is downloaded from this repository. So you see there's this repository tag that we have. We have Anypoint Exchange, and then we have MuleSoft releases. So this I've already covered, the Anypoint Exchange. This serves as a remote repository for you. You can just go and download things. And then there's this second repository, which is our MuleSoft releases repository. So this repository is actually provided by MuleSoft itself. And you see there's this URL present over here. Now if I just go and copy this URL and paste it over here, yeah, if I go and yeah, so if I just paste it over here, you see there's this separate page that is opened. So there are these things which is written. For example, we have the dependencies, we have org, in the HTTP connector we have org, and we have some nested folders inside that org.mule.connectors. So if I just go back and search for org, so inside org we would have mule, and inside mule we would have connectors, right? And inside connectors we had mule HTTP connector. So you would actually go and search for the nested folders. So it would go inside org and then mule and then connectors, and then we have the artifact ID, which is mule HTTP connector. So we would just go to the mule HTTP connector, click on this, and the version we are using right now is 1.10.3, right? So it is right here in front of you. So this is how I'm telling that how your dependencies are actually downloaded from the MuleSoft releases itself, which is already present in your pom.xml. So this is the jar that you see that is right here. So this jar is actually downloaded for you. So this is how it takes place. So this was the dependency which was downloaded through this repository. So we can actually go and trace it inside our .m2 folder as well. So this is how it actually traces, and this is how Maven coordinates traces all of the things. And now we have a very important, another yet important topic, which is pom.xml. You all know that this pom.xml is an XML file, and pom stands for project object model, and it contains all the information related to the project. It has the packaging type, it has the dependencies in all of the repositories which are required to build your project, and it has all the build configuration and the plugin management. So this is the default configuration, the default pom.xml. I have just not done anything. This is the default one only. When you create your project, this is the one which just stands right there in front of you. So it starts with an XML tag, and you have your project tag, where this is the root element of the pom.xml file, which defines the XML schema. And then you have this model version, which is 4.0.0. It actually specifies the Maven POM model version for you. And then I've already talked about this, the three things, that is group ID, which represents the project's group. And then we have the artifact ID, which serves as the name of the project. And this should always be the unique identifier for your artifact. And then we have the version, which actually specifies the version of the project. And then we have something known as packaging, like Mule application. So this, like when we will package our whole application, this project as a jar, so it will be packaged as a mule application. So that is why the package type is mule application. And then we have obviously the name of our project, which is the same, that is the demo project as of now. And this properties tag which you see, this serves as the same properties it serve when we use, the secure properties, our dev local prod. On the left hand side, the properties that we create, so it serves the right exact thing for you. It stores all the reusable variables and so things. And then we have some app runtime mule maven tags. And then this is an important tag, which is the build tag. Now this build tag actually builds your project. Where it actually tells Maven how to build your project. And this building of a project is done using one thing, which is Mule Maven plugin, that also we'll read about. And then obviously we have the dependencies. We all know about this. Whatever dependencies we are going to use, the database, file, SFTP, everything should be placed right here. And then we have the repositories and the plugin repositories. So all the dependencies are downloaded for you using these repositories. And then if you want to download any kind of plugins, so those plugins will be downloaded using this plugin repositories. You can just not go and delete one of the repositories from here, because the repository stack and the plugin repository stack serves different purposes. And then obviously your project ends. So this was all about your pom.xml. And obviously if you are reading about Maven, so we should know that how does Maven actually work. So Maven actually follows some kind of a synchronized order. Like how does Maven work? So when you actually create your project, now when you create your mule project, which is actually your Maven based project at the end only, so when you create your project, it generates a pom.xml file, right, which I already talked about. Now when your pom.xml file it's generated, it reads that pom.xml file and it checks if all the dependencies are already downloaded in your local repository, in your pom.xml. And if it is obviously not found in the local repository, then it goes to the remote repository or central repositories, and it goes over there. It downloads all the dependencies which are required for your project to be built, and it just downloads into the local repository. And then when everything else is sorted, then the fourth step occurs, which is Maven then executes its life cycles, its build phases, and it has obviously some specific goals. So when everything else is done, the life cycle is sorted, it then actually builds the Mule application using this command, which is mvn clean package, and it generates a deployable jar file, which obviously we can use it to deploy our projects. And then at the very end, we have a sixth step, a very last step, which is using this Mule Maven plugin, we can actually build and deploy our projects to, if you want to publish it to Exchange, or if you want to deploy it to runtime, you can do it using this command, which is mvn clean deploy -d mule deploy. So you can use this command to to publish your projects. So these are all these steps, and this is how Maven actually works. Now, if we are reading about that, how does Maven work? Like, how does our projects actually build? How the life cycles are executed, and how your projects are built. So this is one very important plugin, which is your Mule Maven plugin. And you must have read that this Mule Maven plugin is obviously provided by MuleSoft itself, and it extends the capabilities of Maven to build and deploy your projects. And we can not only deploy our projects using this Mule Maven plugin, but we can actually undeploy our projects too. And not only on Cloud Hub itself, but using this Mule Maven plugin, we can actually deploy our projects to RTF, to Cloud Hub, to on premises. You would have separate tags for that in your pom.xml. For example, Cloud Hub deployment is for deployment to Cloud Hub 1.0. Then you have Cloud Hub 2 deployment, which is used to deploy to Cloud Hub 2.0, and so and so. So Maven extends these, Mule Maven plugin actually extends these capabilities for us to support and deploy all of our projects. And this Mule Maven plugin actually has some life cycle, and those life cycle have some goals, some phases to actually fulfill. So this is obviously going to be the next topic, the Maven build life cycle. So The Maven build lifecycle, which is like obviously Maven helps us to automate the entire process. It helps us to compiling our code, to test, to package, to deploy our applications. And it has these three lifecycle phases, which is the default lifecycle, the clean lifecycle, and the site lifecycle. So all of the phases that we are going to read right after this slide, all of those phases will come inside the default life cycle itself. Why? Because the default life cycle actually is the very important one from all of these three, and it helps us to handle our project build and the deployment. And then there's this next clean life cycle, which helps us to clean our target folder, to delete our target folder, and to clean all of the previous build artifacts that we have. And the third life cycle is the site life cycle, which actually helps us to generate a project documentation. So these are the three life cycles. And these life cycles will obviously not work alone, right? So these life cycles will have some phases, and those phases would have some goals to fulfill. So here are some phases that actually are run, you can say, in a synchronized order. And all of these phases comes inside a default life cycle itself. So these are some of the phases which are validate, compile, test, package, verify, install, and then at the very end, deploy. So the validate phase obviously checks and validates all of the project structure and so and so. And then, for example, this is a very important thing to note, that if we are running mvn package directly in our obviously command prompt, then all of the phases will be executed in a cascading ordered phases. It will never be like, for example, you are doing mvn install and then your mvn validate is running at the background. No, obviously your validate will run first, then your compile will run first, then test, and so in a synchronized order, in a cascading order phases. Now, for example, let me just go to this project only, and I'll just do show in system explorer. I'll just click on this project and go to cmd. So I have, let me just show you one or two commands. So if I just do mvn clean, so it will just, scan all of the projects for you. And then it actually executes the clean command, which is the life cycle for you. So it actually deletes the target folder and it cleans all of the project builds, so that when you're actually executing your current project, it just executes from the fresh. So that is what this clean actually do. And you see, if I just run mvn package for you too, so it will again obviously scan all of the things. And you can, actually you will see that it will run in a cascading ordered phases. Now if I just maximize the screen, this is where I wrote mvn package, and you see the validate one ran first, and then these are some of the sub phases which are run. So it is not like the mvn package is running first. We have mvn validate, then we have mvn compile, and then we have the mvn test over here. Yep, over here, the mvn test. And then at the very end, we have mvn package. So this is how it is done. And we can also combine the life cycle with a goal. So we can write mvn clean package also. So what it will do, it will not directly jump to mvn package only. It will first clean your project. It will execute the life cycle. It will first just delete the target folder, delete all of the artifacts that were executed before. It will first clean your project. You can actually see it first ran the clean command, and then it went into the cascading ordered phase. It went into validating your project, and it went into compiling your project, and then it will test if everything is working fine, and then at the very end it will package. So this is how it is actually run. And when you have packaged, you have validated all of the things, you have compiled your code, and after compiling, you'll obviously test your code, right? And when you have tested your code, you'll actually package it into a jar. And then all of these things are done, you'll actually install it into your local repository, and then you can actually deploy wherever you want to, whether it is cloud hub and so and so. So this is how your life cycle, maven goals, and maven phases are executed. So this was all about maven, and reading about maven obviously was very important before we read about github actions, because GitHub inside GitHub Actions Maven is used. So now we will actually see and read about the CI/CD thing. We will have an introduction to GitHub Actions, and we will obviously see now the CI/CD pipeline and the magic of how Maven and GitHub Actions together, like how it helps us to streamline our projects. So I would like to pass it over to Sahil from here now, and I would just pass it the laptop over to him.
Okay, so first of all, thanks Priyanshi for such a wonderful explanation about Maven. So I guess let's move further with the next topic that we have for today is what is CI/CD. So okay, so if we talk about CI/CD, so CI/CD stands for continuous integration and continuous delivery slash deployment. It's a set of practices that aims to streamline and accelerate the software development lifecycle. So I would say this is something more of like a technical definition, but if we talk about what is CI/CD, so like CI/CD is something that is not introduced by someone, but it is more of like a set of practices that is basically being adopted by the community over the period of time. So let's just understand what is CI/CD with the help of this image illustration. So over here, you can see that in this image, we have two sections. Okay, I can say two parts. First is CI and the second one is CD. So CI, we know that it stands for continuous integration. And over here, you can see there are some steps. So let's understand this with the help of an example as well. So as I said, CI/CD is set of best practices that we follow while we are working in our projects. So let's assume like I'm working on a project and there are some steps that I have to follow again and again, and basically to these are some of the steps that are good to follow each and every time I'm working on my code. So to automate these process, we have the CI/CD pipelines. So over here, you can see the steps that we generally follow while working with a code. The first step is source. So what does source means? So while working with the code, it is a very good practice. So whenever we are developing a code, we are developing a functionality so to push that particular piece of code to a source management system. So what is a source management system? It is like you can say a repository where we generally store our code. So once a code is on source code management, so the next good practice is we should build our code. So that's what we can see in the image as well. So once the code is built, we'll be able to know that okay, that our code is good and it is good for the next phase, that is testing. So after the build, we have the next phase, that is testing. So in the testing, we'll be able to test all the functionalities that we have created in our code, that we have developed in our code. So I would say these are the three initial steps that we generally follow, and these three steps comes under the CI uh, portion, I would say. Okay, now if we move further with the CD part, so actually CD have there are two terms we generally refer to when we are talking about CD. The first one is continuous delivery, and the second one is continuous deployment. So, what is the difference between these two terms? We are definitely going to talk about that. But before that, let's just understand like what is CD. And in the image itself, you can see that in the CD section we have all the three parts that were included in the CI, that is basically putting your code to the source code management, then building your code, then testing your code, and the last is deploy. So in CD, there is one more step, that is deployment of our code. So if we talk about like the difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment, so in case of continuous delivery, what happens is once the code is being pushed to the source code management, the code is being built, the code is tested, and the third thing is that the automated pipeline will create a deployable artifact. Now what we can do is like the deployable artifact can be deployed to the servers, but that's not what happens. So in continuous delivery, what happens is we need a human intervention. So with the help of the human intervention, we'll be able to deploy that prod ready artifact, but Without that, we won't be able to do the deployment part. But in case of continuous deployment, what happens is we don't need any human intervention. We can just straight away go through all these steps. We can push our code, we can build it, we can test it, and the last step would be deployment, and that is also automated using the CI/CD pipelines. Okay, if we see further, so these are some of the commonly used CI/CD tools. So for the source code management, we have some of the popular tools like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. For the CI/CD pipelines, we have GitHub Actions, we have Jenkins, we have Azure DevOps. For the code build and testing, we have Maven, Gradle, and JUnit. And for the deployment automation, we have Cloud Hub, we have Docker, and we have Kubernetes. So in this image itself, you can see some of the tools that we are going to use in our demo as well. So for the code source management system, we are going to use GitHub. For the CI/CD pipelines, we are going to use GitHub Actions. And for building and testing our code, Maven is there. And for the last part, where we'll be deploying our code on the server, we have Cloud Hub. Okay, so just before moving on to the demo part, I would like to give a brief intro. I would like to give an introduction about GitHub Actions. So before jumping on to GitHub Actions, I'm like sure everyone must be aware of what is GitHub, because GitHub is something that is widely used in the community. But still, if I have to give a short definition about GitHub, so GitHub is a source code management where generally whatever code we are working on, whatever project we are working on, we can store that particular code on the GitHub repositories. So if we talk about GitHub Actions is nothing but it's like a platform that is provided by GitHub. So over here in the definition itself, you can see GitHub Action is a continuous integration and delivery platform that allows you to automate your build, test, and deployment pipeline. So but like in the demo part as well, but we are going to see how we can create our own GitHub Actions pipeline, and using that pipeline, how we can deploy our applications. Not only just deploy, we will build our applications, we will test our applications as well. Okay, so I would say this is the interesting personally my favorite part of the session, the demo. Okay, so before jumping on to the demo, I will give a brief idea what we are going to see in the demo part. So we will have a Mule application, and what we can do is, like, we know that to deploy our applications, there are generally two ways how we can do that. We can just go to the anypoint platform, and in the platform we can go to the runtime manager. In the runtime manager, we can deploy our application manually through the UI. But in today's session, we are talking about Maven, and we are talking about the CI/CD pipeline. So what we are going to do is we are going to deploy our application using the Maven commands. So for that, we would need, we have a Mule application that I have created in my studio. So I would like to show that first. Let's just save it. And this is the application that I have created. Let's just perform all the updates and it looks good. Okay, so if I show you the application, it is a very basic one. So over here, you can see that I have put a scheduler over here that will run for every 30 seconds. And in the logger, I'm just printing a log message. But this is not something that is important. The main important thing is over here in the pom.xml. Okay, so let's just talk about the important things that we need to add in a pom.xml to perform the CI/CD deployments using the Maven commands. So before jumping into that, I would like to show you one article, I would say, in the like the MuleSoft documentation itself. So you can write Cloud Hub 2.2 Maven deployment, and you can open this first link. Over here, you will get all the steps that you will need to have in your projects, so that you can use Maven to deploy your applications. So if we go through this document, you can see the first step is to add this distribution management tag in our pom.xml. So I have already added this tag in my pom.xml. So what is the purpose of this tag? So basically what happens is when we deploy our applications on Cloud Hub 2.0, so the first step is to publish that particular application on Anypoint Exchange. So to do that particular step, we have to add this distribution management tag. Over here, you can see that we have the URL. and following this URL and following the steps, our application will get published to Anypoint Exchange. And if we move further down in the documentation, we can see we have this plugin tag, and in this plugin, this is basically Mule Maven plugin tag, and in this tag you can see this configuration tag. So this is something that we also need to add in our pom.xml, and I've already done that over here. You can see uh, okay, so here in Mule Maven plugin, I have added the configuration tag, and in the configuration tag, you can see that I'm using Cloud Hub 2 deployment tag because we are going to deploy our application on Cloud Hub 2.0. So here, some of the options are available, some of the tags are available that you can see. So these tags, you must be familiar with these things that you are seeing on the studio. Like there are some options that we generally see when we deploy our application through the UI. Some of the options are like the environment on which we have to deploy our application, the target name. Target is basically the shared space where we have to deploy our application, the release channel. For now, I'm using LTS, and there are many other options like Java version, etc. So one thing, you can see that over here some of the values are populated, but some of the values over here are not populated. I'm using some of the placeholders. So these placeholders will be populated when we'll be deploying our application through CI/CD pipeline. So you can say that all these values will be filled when we will be running the Maven commands, and through that Maven command, we'll be providing all the necessary values that are required over here. So after that, there is one more important thing. So whenever you are going to deploy your application using Mule Maven plugin, or I can say the Maven commands, one important thing is you should give your organization ID over here. So for the organization ID, you can go to your Anypoint platform. On the platform, you'll be able to find your organization ID, and you can just copy that ID and paste it over here. So once all these things are done, the next step would be you can go to your system explorer and you have to copy all the necessary files that we need to push to our source code management. So the three files are pom.xml, muleartifact.json, and the third one is source. So once all these three files are copied, what you can do is like you can push your code using GitHub desktop, or what you can do is you can just straight away go to GitHub and push your code from there. So once the code is pushed on the repository, so this is the repository that I'm going to showcase in today's demo. So over here, you can see that I have the code over here. So this is the code that we are going to deploy on Cloud Hub. There is one more important thing that we have to push to this particular repository along with the code. Over here, you can see that I have a settings folder, and if I go inside the settings folder, I have a setting.xml file. So why we need this setting.xml file? So whenever we deploy our applications locally on our system using the Maven commands, the thing is that like the setting .xml is being used in the backend. So there are some set of credentials, some set of important credentials that are being used, using which we'll be able to deploy our application on any point platform. So over here, you can see that we have those credentials. Like in the password section, you can see I'll be using the connected app ID, connected app secret. And if you are using some connectors like JSON logger or something like that, for that you will need the Nexus credentials as well. Over here, one thing you can see that generally we put the actual value of our credentials over here, but those credentials are basically some sensitive information. We can't just straight away put those information over here in the setting.xml. So for that, what we have done is like we have put some placeholders over here, and these placeholders will be populated at the runtime only. So in that way, what will basically happen is the credentials that we are going to use will always be secured. So the next step would be to create a CI/CD GitHub action pipeline. So how we can do that? So for that, you have to come to this actions tab, and over here you will get an option for a new workflow. So if you're creating a workflow for the first time, you will see this screen. So over here we have multiple templates that are provided by GitHub only, And over here you can see that if you want to deploy your Node.js application to Azure like web app, then you can use this template, and there are many more templates that you can use. But for our demonstration purposes, we are going to have a custom template. So for that, we are just going to click on configure, and over here you will see a predefined, or I would say a set of script that is already there, which you can refer, and which you can like take an idea and then build your own script. So what you can do is, once your script is done, actually I have already created the script because it is pretty much lengthy, so we will spend more time explaining that particular script. So what you can do is, like, you can create a script like the one I have over here, and you can just paste it over here. You can just write your complete script over here, and then you can just commit your changes. So once you're done with your script, you'll be able to see that particular script in your main repository. So over here in the main branch, you can see that we have a .github folder /workflows. So in this workflow folder, you will be able to see your CI/CD pipeline script. Okay, so let's just spend some time to understand this workflow, because in that way you will get a better idea about the CI/CD script, and you'll be, I guess, you'll be able to create your own scripts as well, and that will basically help you to automate these repetitive processes that we generally do when we are working on the projects. So the first thing that we can see over here is we have a name. So what is this name? So if I just want to give an answer, so this is nothing but the name of the workflow that we are going to work on. And after that, we have to specify the triggers. So now to specify a trigger, we have to use a on tag, and in this on tag we can specify multiple type of triggers. So right now I'm working with a workflow dispatch, which means I have to manually execute this particular script. So for, if you want to like have a script with like which you want to manually execute, then you can use workflow dispatch. But in case if you want to have a script that activates on some particular action, like for example, when you push your code to your repository, or you make a pull request, so on such operations, if you want to if you want your script to be executed, so you can do that as well. But personally, I like the workflow dispatch option, because with this we get a lot more flexibility. And how we get that flexibility? Basically, workflow dispatch gives us this input option. So what is this input option? So at the time of basically initiating the process manually, we can provide some values at that particular time. So over here you can see that I have three different input options. The first one is environment, the second one is Java, and the third one is commit. So in the environment section, I can select the particular environment on which I have to deploy my application. In the Java, I can select the Java version, on which Java version which I have to use to build my application, to deploy my application. And in the commit, I can give a commit message, which I can see on the UI for my reference. Okay, so after that we have a run name. So what is this run name? So run name is something that is being generated dynamically at the time we execute our CI/CD script. So when I'll be showing you the part where I'll be executing the script, I'll show you how the run name appears on the screen, and how it is very helpful for us to basically identify a particular run, or particular code changes that we are going to commit or deploy to a server. Okay, so now the main thing comes, and that is jobs. So in the job section, we can give the tasks that we want to perform with the help of our CI/CD pipelines. We just saw that, like, there are some of the tasks we perform while working with the project. The first task is to test the code that we are going to deploy. The second step is to build that code. After that, if we are talking about the MuleSoft project, then the third step would be publish that particular application to Anypoint Exchange, and the last step is to deploy that application to Cloud Hub. So let's just see how we have created the script, and what all you can say things we have used in it. So the first of all, the first job is the testing job. Over here you can see one tag that is called runs on. So this runs on means basically, okay, so whenever we are going to execute this script, what happens is on the backend on GitHub servers, this particular operation is being executed. So if I want to execute a test operation, that means there is a machine in the backend on GitHub servers that is on which this particular job is being executed. So I can decide on what kind of machine I want to execute my job. So let it be, it can be a Ubuntu machine, it can be a window machine, it can be anything. So that is something that I can choose over here. After that, we have to specify the steps. So every job can have multiple steps. So for example, in test, I have mentioned multiple steps which we are going to see one by one. So the first important step is to check out repository. So what this checkout repository step means, so whenever we are going to execute our CI/CD script, the first step would be we have to check in into this particular repository where our code is being present. So for that, we have to perform some set of, I would say, steps. But GitHub has provided us some set of, you can say, predefined actions. So let me just show you one thing. If I just edit this file, over here you can see a marketplace, and in this marketplace you can search for actions. So what are these actions? These are some, like you can say, some of the jobs that are pre-made, that are already made by the GitHub team, and we can just straight away use these steps in our GitHub CI/CD pipeline scripts. So the first step is to check in into this particular repository. To do that, I have a action already present in the marketplace, so I can just directly use that. You can look out for that particular action over here. Like just I wrote checkout, so I can go to this particular action. Then over here, I get the documentation for that particular action, and I can just straight away use it from here. So I can just copy it and paste it in my uh, GitHub CI/CD script. Okay, so the first step we are good with. The first step is to check in into the repository. That is done. So the next step is to cache the dependency. So why we are caching the dependencies? So whenever we are deploying our application using Maven commands, like everybody must have seen that on the terminal, there are a lot of time there are dependencies that are being downloaded. So every time we execute a Maven command, generally what happens is Maven dependencies are being downloaded. So just to save our time for the future runs, so what we generally do is we cache all those dependencies on our backend machine. So for that, we have added this particular action over here that says cache dependencies. Using this particular action, we can cache all the dependencies that we used in our initial runs, so that in the future runs, it will take less time to execute the complete script. And over here we can mention the path as well, that what all repositories we need to cache. So over here you can see that I have provided the path for the m2 folder, and in the m2 folder in the repository, whatever dependencies are over there, all the dependencies will be cached. And to basically use that cache, we have to generate a key which we can use in our further, I can say, executions. Okay, so the next step would be to set up Java. Okay, we are done with the two steps. We have the Maven on our backend system. Now the next step would be to set up Java on that particular machine. So to perform that task, again we have an action named as setup Java. We can use this action, and over here you can see that we can provide several options as well. So if you want to download some particular Java, let's say for this demo I am using the Turmeric distribution, but you want to use some other distribution, for example Oracle's, you want to download Oracle Java, then you can do that as well. And over here you can specify the version as well. There are many more I would say options that are present, which you can specify according to your requirement. Okay, now we are done with the setup for the Java. Now the last step would be, for this particular job, is to test our code. So for that, I'll be executing a Maven command through the CI/CD pipeline. So over here, you can see that I have given the name to the step that I'm going to execute next, and that is test with Maven. And in this env tag, you can see that I am using some values over here. So if I give you idea about these values, what are these values? So over here, you can see that I am mentioning connected app ID, connected app secret, Nexus credentials, Nexus password. So these are some of the credentials that are basically, I would say, sensitive information, and that are basically required whenever we are deploying or testing our application. And over here, you can see that again, I'm not passing the exact value over here. I'm picking this value from somewhere else. So now from where I'm taking this value, let's just first see that, and then we'll move further with the script. So if I go to this settings section and if I open it, over here, if you go to the secrets and variables and then in actions, over here you can see that I have stored some of the secrets, and this is basically all the credential, all the, I would say, arguments that I needed to deploy my applications. So you can see the connected app ID is over here, connected app secret is over here, and these are some of the sensitive information which we can't just openly store it somewhere. So what we can do is we can come to this secret section, we can create our own, but we can create our own secret, and at that time we can provide the value as well. Now the value which we provide will get encrypted in the backend, and once we store that particular value, we won't be able to see that value again. So what we can do is, like, we can just update that value, we can delete that particular value as well, but we can't view it. So if you just want to, like, if you're unsure about any value, any particular thing, so you can, what you can just do is, like, you can delete it, or you can update it, or you can create a new one. So whatever credentials that we are using will be picked up from here only. So let's get back to the script. So now this thing will make more sense to you, that over here I'm using a secrets keyword. So secrets dot connected app, that means I have to go to the secret section, and from there I have to pick the connected app variables value. Same for the connected app secret, for the Nexus username and password. After that, at last, I have a run tag, and over here I have written a script, and this is basically a simple if else condition that executes based on the environment that I'm going to choose. So when I'll be choosing the environment, when I will execute the script manually, at that time whatever environment I'll choose, based on that a particular command will execute. So all the commands are same, the only difference is that the variables that I'm going to use will be different. So over here, you can see that the Maven command that I'll be using is mvn clean test hyphen mule env. So this will be the mule environment, and after that I have mule dot key. So this is the mule encryption key, and over here you can see that I'm using my own personalized, or I can say the setting dot xml that I pushed on the source code management. I'm using that particular setting dot xml. I don't want to use the setting dot xml that is there on the backend server. I want to use the xml that I have pushed into my code. So we can refer to that particular setting dot xml in this way. So once the command is executed, the last step would be to upload the mUnit report, and we can do that using the upload artifact action. So once that thing is done, over here you can see that I have provided some arguments as well. Like, I can give the name to that particular report, I can tell the path of that particular report, and there is one thing that is called retention period. So if I explain what is a retention period is, so when we generally work with GitHub Actions, we generally store our artifacts on that particular GitHub action run itself. Now the thing is, when we are working with the free version, we have a limitation while storing our artifacts. So we can't store the artifacts like there is a particular limit to it. So what happens is the retention period is by default 90 days. So if we do deployments again and again, so that will create a lot of artifact files, and at a particular point of time we won't be able to store any new files. So what we can do is we can set a minimum retention period, so that after like 2 days that particular artifact file will get deleted, and we will get more space, so that in the future runs we can store more artifacts. So this is about a single job. If we we go with the other jobs that I've specified in the script, they are pretty much same. So, but there are some changes which I'll be explaining. So the next job will be built. Now to execute this job, there is one condition. The test job should be completed successfully. For that, I have mentioned a tag over here that says needs. So needs tells us that this job will only be executed once the previous job is done. So we can mention the job name as well. So it will check if this particular job was completed successfully or not. If it was, then only the next step will start its initiation. Okay, so in the steps as well, we can see we have the same steps. We will check into the repository. We will store the cache dependencies. We will set up Java. Then we will build the we will build the code using the Maven command. Over here, you can see the Maven command that I'm going to use in the script. That is mvn-b package hyphen file pom.xml. Using hyphen file, I am referring to the pom of the code that I have just deployed in the source code management, and I'll be providing the mule.env and the mule.key from the secrets itself. After that, once the jar is built, I can store that particular artifact on that particular GitHub run itself, GitHub action run itself, and I have provided the retention period as well. Okay, now the next step would be to publish that particular artifact on Anypoint Exchange. Again, the steps will be the same. To execute this publish to exchange, the build phase should be completed successfully. We have to check into the repository, we have to cache the dependencies. We Okay, now the thing is that the jar is being uploaded on that particular GitHub action run. Now we have to download that jar as well. So for that, we have another action named as action slash download artifact. Using this, we can download the artifact we have stored, and that artifact is basically the jar that we are going to deploy on Cloud Hub. So once we have that jar, the next step would be to publish to exchange. We are going to publish the artifact to Anypoint Exchange using the following command: mvn clean deploy hyphen d skip test to skip all the tests, and we'll be using the setting.xml that we have provided in our code itself. Okay, so till this point, we can say our artifact will be published to Anypoint Exchange. Now the last step would be deploying our application to Cloud Hub. So over here, again, the steps would be same. The previous job should be executed successfully. We can mention the runs on which machine I have to execute this particular job. We have to check into the repository. We have to cache the dependencies. We have to download the jar file once more, and after that, we can run the Maven command using which we'll be deploying our application. So over here, I have like referenced to all the secret values that I've stored on my GitHub repo itself. And here's the command that I'm going to use to deploy my application. The command is mvn clean deploy hyphen d skip tests hyphen d mule deploy. So hyphen d mule deploy basically means we are going to deploy a MuleSoft application, and over here in the runtime, I'm providing all the values that is basically necessary to deploy our application at the runtime. So if you remember in the pom.xml, there were some of the placeholders. So all those placeholders will be populated by these values only, which I am going to populate at the runtime. So this is pretty much about the script. Now let's just execute the script and see how we can deploy our code to our Anypoint platform using this CI/CD pipeline. So for that, again, you have to come to your Actions tab. Over here, you have to click the name of the workflow you have just created. Over here, you can see that this workflow has a workflow dispatch. Basically, it means it's a manual trigger. For that, you can click on Run Workflow. Now, while working on GitHub repository, there can be multiple branches, and you can select a particular branch for which you want to deploy your code. Like we can say there can be a feature branch where like there can be a code you want to deploy that particular code, so you can do that as well. But right now our code is in main branch, so we are going to select main. For the deployment environment, I'll be selecting prod. For Java version, I'll be selecting Java 17. And for the commit message, let's say I will write initial commit, and I will click on run workflow. So this will basically execute our CI/CD pipeline, and now we'll be seeing like how all things look at the backend. So first thing is, you can see over here, this is the run name I was talking about. So this run name basically gets generated every time dynamically based on the environment and the commit message that I've provided at the time of initiation. Now, if I click this over here, you can see that there are the jobs that we mentioned in our script. So the first job is the test, second one is build, the third one is publish to exchange, and the last one is deploy to GitHub. So we can see that the test job is already done. Let's just click to build and see what is going on. So we can see that a terminal is open, and over here we can see all the logs that are being showed on the backend system. So all these logs are getting executed, or I would say printed on the backend system on the GitHub server. Okay, now we can see that the build job is also done. Now the next job is to publish to exchange. Once this job is done, we'll be able to see our application on Anypoint Exchange. Before that, I would like to show okay, so this is the runtime manager where you'll be able to see the application once it is deployed. And in case of exchange, what we can do is like let's just select connectors for now, and let's just write app. So over here you'll be able to see the apps as well, like in the app section as well, the application that we are going to publish once the execution is complete. So over here you can see all the logs are being printed. In the meanwhile, this thing is happening, I would like to tell some of the more things that are there. So if I go back to the summary section, okay, so I told that whenever we are building a project, so what we are basically doing is we are uploading that artifact. So from where you can like access that particular artifact. So if you scroll down over here, you can see that we have a artifact, and if you click on it, the artifact will get downloaded on your system. And this is basically the jar, this is basically the jar that we created using the Maven command in the build phase. So over here, you can see that the publish to exchange operation is completed. So what we can do is we can go over here and we can just refresh our page, and you can see that the jar asset is now on Anypoint Exchange. You can see the Maven GitHub Actions, and over here you can see my name as well. Now the next step would be deploying our application to Anypoint, basically runtime manager. So let's just refresh it once again so that okay. Now over here you can see that the deployment process is already started. If I go back to the deploy to Cloud Hub job, in the log section we'll be able to see, yeah, over here you can see that the deployment is started, and right now it's checking if that particular application is already there on runtime manager or not. We can see that right now it's applying. We can click on it and we can just wait for it to get deployed, and then we'll see if everything works fine or not. Till the time you can see, these are all the options that we specified in our pom.xml tag. Like we selected the LTS version, so we have that LTS version over here. We selected Java 17. For the replica count and replica size, we chose 1, and for the replica size we chose 0.1 vcore, so that is also over here. If we go to the properties section, you can see the mule env mule key that was passed dynamically through the CI/CD pipeline. So all the things that we provided are here only. So let's just wait for the application to get deployed. And once this is done, I guess we'll be good with the CI/CD pipeline as well. And yeah, meanwhile I was showing the artifact section. Apart from that, there is one more thing which I was talking about, and that was cache. Like I told you that we generally cache the dependencies, so we can see that cache over here in the cache section. And this is the cache basically that we stored in our this particular run. So over here you can see that we have a 69 MB of data that is being cached. And if I go back, let's just see on any one platform itself. Okay, now we can see that the application is deployed. And if we go to the log section, we can see the logs are being printed over here. We have the name of the application, we have a message, and I guess we are good with the deployment part as well. If we go back, okay, now again we can see that the deploy to Cloud Hub job is also done, and all the jobs now have a green tick. That means our CI/CD pipeline executed successfully. Over here, you can see that how much time each and every job took, and the total duration of the CI/CD pipeline to deploy our application from start to end. So that is pretty much about the CI/CD. If there are any questions, you feel free to ask those questions in the chat, and I guess we are all good.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sahil and Priyanchi, for sharing such valuable insights. So, I have enabled presenter mode for everybody, so you can unmute yourself and ask questions if you have any.
Yeah, thanks for the wonderful session, Sahil. Uh, I have a query.
Yep.
Like, so each environment we may have different capacity for the application, right?
Yep.
So how can we achieve here? Like,
Okay, so different capacity, as in you're talking about the configurations, like the replica size and weak replicas, right?
yeah,
Okay, so what you can do is like you can put that thing in the input tag itself. So like that's why I said like the workflow dispatch provides us more flexibility, that at the runtime we can choose different options. So suppose you have different environments, correct? So over here, if I'm deploying my application to the production environment, let me just share my screen. I guess I have just uh, turned it off. Yeah. Okay, so over here you can see that I can provide some set of information manually. So I can set the environment, I can set the Java version. Similarly, we can add some more tags where we can specify these configuration details as well, like the replica size, the vco size, all those things.
got it.
Yeah.
Anyone else has any question?
I guess Harshit Gupta is asking if we can get the workflow.yaml, and someone in the chat was also asking if we can get the YAML file for the GitHub Actions. Sahil, can we do that?
Yeah, sure. I can definitely share the YAML file with you. Komal, how will be able to like share that particular file?
Yeah, you can. They can contact me on my email, and then I will definitely share those.
Yeah,
But
that will be great. I will basically share that particular YAML file with you, and you can like share it further.
Sahil, I have a question.
Yeah.
So first of all, the POM XML, like, do we have we implemented a parent POM and BOM file for this
Uh,
pom.xml?
no, actually, we didn't we didn't have that much of time because of the session. But yeah, we can definitely do that thing. But for now, for the demo purposes, what we did was we just straight away put the configuration tag in the pom.xml of the application, and we are just straight away using that.
Awesome. But yeah, appreciate this. This is very good. So how can we like the jars that is successfully deployed in jar? How can we promote only that to QA?
Okay, so you're saying that if you want to promote that particular application
Yeah,
to a higher environment.
right.
So generally, what I do is like I just straight away just go to my GitHub Actions workflow and manually run it, because generally how we follow the best practices, like we have like several branches for different environments. So for example, if I'm working on like dev environment, for that I have a feature branch, so all the code is there. So once that code is pulled to a higher branch, so that's why I prefer to use like manual workflow, because I can manually select the environment and then deploy my application accordingly. But if you're saying that if you're basically promoting your application, if you want to promote your application to a higher environment, what you can do is for the lower environments, you can like set a manual trigger. But when you know that your application like, okay, so let's just say there's a separate branch for QA. When the code is pulled on that particular branch, you want to execute your pipeline for the QA environment, we can set up all those credentials, or I would say all the configuration in that particular manner, and in that way you'll be able to execute your CI/CD pipeline for the QA environment. Does that answer
Perfect.
your question?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you very much.
So, does GitHub Actions support Anypoint CLI integration?
To be honest, I haven't tried that. That is something actually I also want to explore. It is a quite some time I'm working with the GitHub Actions pipeline, but yeah, this is something that I still need to explore.
Thanks.
Yeah. Do we have any other questions?
And all the variables in the workflow.yaml, right? Where is that getting fed from? So
Okay.
is it all, yeah,
Yeah. So if I show you this, okay. So if you go to the settings of your GitHub repo, over here you can see this particular section, secrets and variables. So over here I have stored all the credentials that I need to use for the GitHub workflow when it's executed. So you can see over here I have stored the connected app ID, connected app secret, I have stored the Nexus credentials as well. So what you can do is like you can create your own repository secret. Over here you can give it a name and the value of for that particular secret. Once you have created that particular secret, you won't be able to see that secret value again, but you can edit it and delete it. So that is basically completely secured. No one is able to see that value once it is being stored on the repository secret section.
perfect.
Yeah. Any more questions? I don't think so. I guess then we are good. Uh, I will share the YAML file with Komalpreet, and anybody who wants that particular YAML file can contact Komalpreet for that. And to be honest, I am very thankful to all. Actually, this is my first meetup session, and I was very excited for it, as I was planning for this session for a very long period of very period of time. But yeah, just thank you for being there.
It was really great session. Yeah, so yeah, everyone, I will share recordings tomorrow on both event page and Kalias Consulting YouTube channel. And you will receive a feedback form right after this, after we wrap up this session. Please try to fill that. So I know it's a bit late, but if you won't mind, please turn on your cameras and let's capture our happy faces after this mutual exchange of knowledge session. So please turn on your cameras if you won't mind. I know it's too late, but yeah, if you can. Thank you so much for taking out time on Friday and joining this session. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. You've been a great audience.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Happy weekend.
Bye. Happy
Bye.
weekend.
Happy weekend.